Good evening and welcome back to our Bible study on demand. We are so excited to be back with you in the new year 2022. It's great to be again back with our friend, our brother, our colleague, Reverend Dr. Richard Allen Washington. We are excited because we have started a great thing and we appreciate all of the positive feedback that we have gotten around the Bible study on demand. We're glad that many of you have been watching it, that you have gotten something out of it. And we're excited this year as we embark upon a new year to not only continue what we've started, but to do a different study. And so we're excited about this because we have had a lot of conversations during this past few weeks while we've been on break, which has been a necessary break, right?
Absolutely.
We have taken some time. Hopefully you have taken some time to rest and to recharge and to relax. But it's been a good time. It's been a good season for us to really think about not only what we've been dealing with from a pandemic standpoint, but all of the different things that we've been going through as a church, as a universal church, as our respective local churches, and even in our personal lives, to really think about some things that I think are going to really help us as we embark upon this new study that we're going to share with you in just a minute. Now, the reason that we want to, before we jump into the context of our new subject matter, we want to kind of give you some background about how we arrived here, right, and how we got here, because throughout this break, you know, we talk all the time, right? We talk very often, and we share all aspects of our lives, not just our pastoral lives with each other. And, you know, this is, from the pandemic standpoint, we have been doing this, 2 years, going into year 3.
Yes.
This has been a long, arduous road for all of us. But particularly, as we have shared, is that as leaders of churches, as pastors, this has been particularly challenging on a number of different levels, right? We've had to, for the most part, we've administratively functioned alone. And that's not us trying to complain. That's just the reality.
Right.
We've had some teams that have been helping us to do some administrative things, but for the majority of it, for the large part, we've functioned alone. We've had to still try to bear the burdens and the stress of making sure that the church continues, and wondering and worrying about how things are going to go. And in the midst of all of that, right, people forget this is, I'm going to share this, right? Maybe we're being too transparent, but people sometimes forget that even as pastors, we're still human beings, right? We have lives outside of this, right? And so in the pandemic, both of us have had children.
Yeah.
And so we've been not only trying to navigate the pastoral waters, we've tried to navigate our own personal waters, right? Of trying to stay COVID-free, trying to raise a young child and not getting any sleep, trying to navigate, a young child in school, and all of the different things that you've been dealing with. We've been dealing with them as well, and so we totally get all of that, in addition to the struggles and the challenges that we've had from a pastoral standpoint. And in those conversations, what we've realized is that we are kind of in a unfamiliar territory, uncharted territory, if you will, because we've never been here, right?
That's correct.
This whole coronavirus, as they say, is novel, right?
Yeah.
This is totally new. We don't have a frame of reference for how to navigate this. And when we think about what the future looks like, we have been critical of ourselves. Of course, we hear the criticisms from out there as well. They get back to us, but we've been critical of ourselves.
Weekly.
We wonder, are we doing enough? How does this look? How can we make it better? How can we engage? If we do something, we get criticized for that. If we don't do something, we get criticized. But we get all of that. But one of the things that in our recent conversations that we've come to realize is that as we move forward, as we continue to get into what God has for his church in this next season, that as much responsibility as we have as pastors, that really the road ahead requires us to move forward as pastor and people.
Yes.
And that is not just us saying that from our own selfish type of motivation, but there's really a biblical basis for this.
Absolutely.
Because as much as we've had to redefine and reevaluate what it means to pastor in a pandemic, right? Our whole role of shepherding and pastoring has been redefined and flipped on its head. We've had to learn how to preach again. in an empty room, right? We've had
With
to
a
learn
camera.
how to navigate every aspect of this. But as much as it has required us to redefine our role as husband, as father, as male, as pastor, one thing that we've also realized is that for many of you, our viewers, it's caused you to reevaluate your role as member as well. Because then the reality is, and we're sensitive to this, we didn't realize this, but we were sensitive to this, that for many of you, your identity as a church member has been turned on its head. We haven't been able to come to church. You haven't been able to interact. You haven't been able to come to your committee meeting. You haven't been able to be on your board or be a part of whatever organization you're a part of. And the way that you related to church, the way that you were able to be a member of St. John or a member of Allen Temple and what gave your membership meaning has been reduced in some ways unintentionally to watching content on TV and maybe even sending an offering. And we appreciate the offering. Please continue to do that. But we realize that we need to really help us walk through, as pastor and people, these new roles. And so what does it mean to be a church member in a pandemic, right? And how does that relate to us? So this is really an opportunity for us to be transparent with you and to see how we can help each other navigate these new uncharted territories. And so I'm going to turn it over to you because as we were talking, you brought out some really interesting points about the biblical basis for pastor and people navigating uncharted territories and new ways. Because you started with Moses, I want you to kind of kick us off and tell us your thoughts there.
Well, with Moses, we all respect Moses as one of the greatest leaders in the biblical narrative, certainly one who had a great level of success. And we really kind of highlight his successes, but also his failures. And Moses is one of those leaders who had the opportunity to fail and succeed with people supporting and people failing with him. And so Moses...
Wait a minute, so you had a leader like Moses who failed, who made mistakes?
Moses made mistakes. Moses failed.
The pastor?
Yeah, Moses was in bad shape. Moses even had to get help with learning how to be a leader.
My.
Yeah, Moses, he was managing a lot. He was administering and he was shepherding. And those are two elements that people sometimes don't understand that we have to do. And the way that our church is set, your pastor is your CEO, he is the chief administrator, which means, and this is important, a lot of people believe that the church should be run in a way that benefits them, like they know what works best for them. But actually, that's not how our church is set up. The shepherd actually is the chief administrator, and the church is run in a way that allows the shepherd to be most effective in their gifting and in their abilities to lead. The most dangerous thing I often see when I'm called in to counsel and to consult congregations and pastors, not just in the African Methodist faith, but other faiths, is you have two different styles attempting to work at the same time. And that creates a big problem, and it's biblical. And until the church, which is the children of God in the biblical narrative, got in line with how their leader was gifted to lead them, they struggled. But when they got on the same page and they followed, because in order to lead, you have to know how to follow, then they progressed in everything that God wanted them to. It's the same way with us. Until we get on the plan that God has for us, we're going to be flailing in the wind.
Ultimately, God is all of our leaders.
You got to follow God's plan, or you're not going to get where you are destined to go. And so the same way has happened in the biblical narrative. So Moses, I want to pull out for us. I'm going a little old school with the hard copy.
Does it have red letters for Jesus?
Yeah, I think this one got a little red lettering too.
That's a real Bible.
It's a real Bible. I want to go and look at this text in the Old Testament, the book of Exodus. I want to call your attention and ours to the book of Exodus in chapter 17. Exodus chapter 17, verses 8 through verse number 16. I want us to catch this. It's Exodus 17, verses 8 through 16. And it's one of my favorite stories, actually. And it's so important because of what it shares with us. The book of Exodus, I do need you to know the context of it, is a book that's designed to talk about people who are coming out of things. And so when we're talking about coming out of, you're coming out of a pandemic, you're coming through a pandemic, you need to know that there's some ways biblically that God expects us to come out of, to live through, and also to work in. And Exodus does that.
You know, I'm gonna interrupt you there because I just got a sermon idea.
Come on.
And y'all gonna hear this because we're gonna talk about an exit strategy.
My God.
You know,
I like
you got
that.
to have an exit strategy.
You got to have
That's
more ways
a series
than
y'all
one.
gonna hear again.
In more ways than one. Everybody needs an exit strategy. I like that. Exodus is about coming through some things. And the truth is, this isn't just about church administration and church building and church ministry. If you look at this personally, you need to know how to come out of some of the things that held you in 2021 and some of the things that are potentially trying to grip you and pull you back into a vice grip, if you will, in 2022. And so Moses is struggling at this point. Get this. In chapter 16, they had manna and quail. And in chapter 17, he's already given water from a rock. But we know that he strikes the rock, he gets into some trouble. All of that's happening. Get this. Most people don't understand everything that Moses went through as a leader, as the shepherd. But it comes out even when he tries not to. So in chapter 17, this is really how we can get through as pastoring people through this pandemic. And I want to introduce it as background there. Moses, the children of Israel in the book of Exodus are coming through some things, and they survived pandemic. This world of pandemic is nothing new. The children of Israel dealt with plagues, which are pandemics. And Moses guided them through it. So there's a playbook, if you will, for how each one of us can get through it. And I just want to share with that. Verse 8 talks about a group of people that you will hear me refer back to as the Amalekites. Moses and the children of Israel are headed to their promised land, but they have to go through some challenges to get there. And like all of us, we're headed to our promised land where the promises of God will be manifested in our lives, but we've got to go through some challenges to get there. Pastor and people together. We got to go through them together. And so what we discover in this 17th chapter, verse 8 through 16, is how they work together to get through it. And so I want to get started with that. Let me tell you what they're facing. They've got to go through a really nasty situation. The Amalekites, they are the Green Berets, they are the Ranger, the Navy SEAL, they are the Special Forces unit of any military organization. The Amalekites are that kind of crowd. You don't want to mess with them. They're like back in the day here at Allen Temple, this neighborhood was a peaceful neighborhood, but there were certain people you didn't
mess with.
You didn't want to mess with them. If you were going to go to the store, my uncle owned a store a couple of streets over. If you were going to go to the store to pick up some candy or to pick up some chips or something, there's some people you kind of want to be like, no, let's go back the long way. Let's not go around this way. You run into them, you might lose all your stuff, right? So they have to go through a particular kind of neighborhood, if you will, and deal with a particular kind of enemy, an adverse situation. And the adverse situation was called the Amalekite people. They were rough, low down. They were the descendants, though, of people who we know. They are the descendants of the brother who tries to steal his brother's birthright. So if you want to know about some people, you have to go back. And when we look back at who the Amalekites were, they were connected to the brother in the biblical narrative who tries to steal his own brother's birthright. Yeah, different people. So Moses has to lead the children of Israel through that situation. And what's unique is, as the shepherd, the pastor, he prepares them as best he can, and they start. And The only way to get through this is they have to fight. I want to put a pin there and to help people recognize in order to get to where you need to be, you're going to have to fight through some things.
It's funny, as you were talking about that, to your point, there are some things in life where the only way out is through.
Yes.
And this pandemic is one of them.
Yes.
The only way we get out of this is we got to go through it.
Pause, because you and I talk, we are a part of the greatest fraternity that has ever been made. We are.
Don't you know?
Yeah, we're part of it. Dr. Chambers, we are part of it. Wesley, we're part of the greatest organization for men that you will ever know, the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
My. Black and old gold.
Yes. We are part of that organization. And one thing that we've learned becoming a part of it was that the house of Alpha is so high.
You can't get over it.
You can't get over it.
My.
So low.
You can't get under it.
So wide.
You can't get around it.
You must
come through the door.
There are some situations where you got to go through. This pandemic is
uncomfortable as it is, as hard as it is, you got to go through it.
As you said, the pandemic, we can't get around this. You can be vaxxed, you can be boosted, you can be washing hands, you can have all of the cleansing instruments that we need, and we are for them. And people still catch COVID. And people still have to wrestle with, is it safe to gather in more than 10? This is something we have to go through.
But the shout is that on the other side of through,
come on,
is a victory. Yea, though I walk through the valley, because we're not going to the valley, we're going through the valley. So whatever you're going through, you're not going to. This is just something that is a part of the process.
Yes.
And on the other side, that's somebody's Bible study right there. That's somebody's sermon right there. I don't know who needs to hear that. But whatever you're going through, this is not how the story ends. This is not how your final chapter concludes. This is just a piece of the puzzle. And when you get to the other side of through, you'll look back and say, I'm glad I went through it.
Yes.
Because now I'm stronger.
See,
and I'm wiser.
That part right there. On the other side of through, the church as a congregation is going to be healthier. The pastor is going to be stronger. The congregation, I believe this, will be more spiritually mature. Because that's what this pandemic is
what we've
forcing.
Been through. Yeah, that just preached to me.
The pandemic is forcing us to level up and to rid ourselves of the excrements that we have been associated with over the last few years. God is in control. And in the midst of this pandemic, God is forcing us to go through. As pastor and people, here's the key. Through it together, the victory we shall have.
Wow, that's good. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're right on time. The children of Israel going through this, their shepherd, pastor, Moses, is going through with them. Never assume that what you're doing as a congregation, that your pastor has absolutely nothing to do. Moses is right with them, and you'll see it.
And put a pause there.
Go for it.
Because and this is not a complaint, but I think it's helpful for people to understand that about leaders.
Come on.
Because Moses, as you mentioned, Moses, we love Moses. Moses is held in high esteem. Moses is a strong leader. Moses he's the man of the Old Testament.
He's yeah.
But I think sometimes people can get in their mind, and it's not intentional, that somehow the leaders, the pastors, are somehow insulated from the same experiences everybody else is having. So as the people are going through this, Moses is going through this. And Moses is probably going through some of his own private stuff as well. Moses is probably experiencing, and I don't know this, I'm using my spiritual imagination, that Moses is probably going through some self-doubt, some questioning from when the critics are saying, why'd you bring us out here to die? Why we only got manna? And he's questioning, God, you told me to do this and you told me to do, and he's wondering and second guessing his call and second guessing his purpose and second guessing his decisions, and he's trying his best. And as we'll see here, Moses gets tired even as Moses. And I say that to bring that out because You know, and this is maybe just us being transparent. You know, in the same pandemic that everybody's been living through, pastor and people are living through it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you may only relate to pastor as pastor, pastor is also person going through this as well. And the only way to get through this is for all of us to understand we're all going through this together.
And we all have roles and responsibilities that a pandemic will help you to understand, because sometimes people are comfortable with the pastor doing everything. Now, one of the things that the people don't get to see is the preparation for the product that is received each week, because we are a consumer nation, and as a consumer nation, we're used to everyone doing things for us. We are what I call spiritually lazy, and what we do is we want it our way. We want it cooked our temperature, and we don't want to work for anything. Remember, the pandemic has forced us to do some things that we haven't wanted to do. And that's just not people, that's pastoring. We've had to work harder to get used to some things. Preaching to an empty room, yeah, but also preaching to a camera, and not knowing if we're sounding like we need to sound, but also if this makes sense, because nobody is there to say amen. Nobody is there to
say, "Help them, Lord."
Yeah, and to be honest, nobody in the room is praying for you as you stand or as you teach. So it is interesting that there are some things that the pastor and the people go through that sometimes it just takes everybody acknowledging it together. Here in this text, Moses dealing with the weight that you said, I'm not sure if, Lord, Moses went to God daily, sometimes hourly, because of the criticisms that he received from the people. If you fed them manna, well, I mean, that's all we got. If you gave them quail, well, I'm tired of eating quail. If you give them water, well, it ain't pureal. It ain't, you know, there was no satisfying. And that's something that pastors recognize through this pandemic. Nobody's going to be satisfied with what you do or don't do.
That's par for the course.
And get this, people, as a congregation, you too have to accept that some of the things that people are asking are really unrealistic at this time. And what Moses helps to live in this 8th through 16th verse is how we can deal with it together. So let's see here very quickly. They have to fight this evil, low down, and can I be honest? The enemy of the Amalekites are what I call the veterans. They know the desert, they know the land better than the children of Israel. Here's something exegetically that you should pay attention to. Not hermeneutically, but exegetically. New word for the new year. Exegetically.
That's our resident scholar, y'all.
Oh, please. Exegetically, get this, Carrie, exegetically, the Amalekites are really the people who are the experts at warfare, particularly desert warfare. And this is where they are. They're in the desert. God has allowed the children of Israel with their pastor to go into a situation where they are inexperienced and they are fighting a veteran. Why would God allow his own people, the chosen people, to walk into a situation where they are not only the underdog, but they are the one who has no experience?
Rookie.
And they have no understanding of how to fight in a desert. This baffled. These are expert warriors in the desert. And God has said, you got to go through them to get to the victory. What I want you to understand is one thing that Walter Brueggemann, the Old Testament scholar and expert, says is that God was attempting in every battle that the children of Israel had to go through in the Old Testament, in the period of going to the promised land, God was helping them to recognize this truth. You are never to be dependent on a land or a material aspect. You are always to be dependent upon me. Thou shalt love the Lord with thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. God first wanted to teach the children, pastor and people, that your dependency is not on culture or land. Your dependency is on me.
how has the pandemic done that exact same thing?
My God, that's what I'm saying. Look at it. The pandemic has forced the community of faith to recognize, as the hymn writer said, that we have to stretch our hands to God, for no other help we shall come to know.
You can't depend on the building.
You can't depend on the bank either.
You can't depend on the bank.
You can't depend on, watch this, you can't depend on the music. You cannot depend on those who come to facilitate. Because I don't know about you, but we have lost people in the course of the pandemic. I ain't talking about walking away from the church. I'm talking about God taking people from the community of faith that have supported the community of faith through many things. God has placed the children of Israel and their pastor in the line of fire against an expert. And this pandemic has rendered us helpless if we aren't willing to turn to God. Turn to God and not to the trinkets and the tricks of the culture. One of the things that preaching professors and scholars in the seminaries are now suggesting is that we can finally get beyond the age of tricks and gimmicks and in the congregation.
That happens in the church, tricks and gimmicks.
Smoke and mirrors. There are some congregations and pastors who are what I call abracadabra and hocus pocus. They always conjuring up something with smoke and mirrors, and they always got something trying to get people, some gimmicky, cliquish. And scholars have said, oh, now the cultural gimmicks
Don't work no
have
more.
fallen at the feet of Christ, because we have to look up and say to him, you are the Lord, you are the one. Don't get caught in that. The children of Israel are going against an enemy that the gimmicks, the smoke and mirror, and their ability to use tricks of the trade are not working.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned that. So the tricks of the trade, right? The things that we have normally gone to are not working.
Yeah.
Right. And as leaders, pastor and people, the things that we may have always gone to, we can't go to that because this is a totally uncharted territory. And when you're in a new situation, sometimes you got to do some new and different things that haven't necessarily been done before. And I know we're about to get to the good part of what they do, so I keep interrupting you.
But this is good, because the way we're sharing in this, I'm hopeful that people will understand that you can personalize this too. That the way you have operated in relationships pre-pandemic is not working in the pandemic. There are so many people I know, I'm in it, who have gotten into relationships and they have done so many wonderful things, and some have not been so wonderful. There are people who get divorced in the pandemic, but Lord have mercy, there are folk who get married in the pandemic. There are some folk who find their true love in the midst of this barren experience. And what you did previous to the pandemic is not working. What you're doing in the pandemic, the relationships you are developing in this pandemic are sufficient. And that's God. That's God peeling away what doesn't work any longer. Because now, can I be honest? We all prayed for this. You and your congregation, me and my congregation.
I just need a break.
We have prayed for this. Don't get it twisted. This pandemic and this experience is not catching anybody off guard. You prayed for this. You prayed that you would spend more time with your family. Oh, you just didn't know how it was going to take place. You prayed for the ability to get you a break. I just need a vacation. I mean, just if I could just work from home. I done heard people say that over the course of the year. Whoop, there it is. You look, pastors have said, man, I just need a break. I need
a month off.
I need something. I mean, I'm tired of looking at the same faces. Whoop, you ain't looking at no faces, you know. We need to be more
technology. We need
driven.
to get more technology driven.
I need a camera. I need this. I need whoop. There it is. It's so fascinating that people have prayed for all of this, and folks say, I ain't pray for no pandemic. Stop. You and I have the power to pray for whatever we choose and whatever we desire. What we don't have is the authority to tell God how to do it.
My.
So we can pray, but we don't have the power.
Let's go back, because I want that to sink in.
Come on.
We have We have the
power
power
to pray for
to
whatever.
pray for whatever we want.
Yeah.
Prayer works. You have the power to pray for whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
But you don't have
The authority to tell God how to answer your prayer.
You need to let that sink in. Because I think that's where a lot of our tension sometimes comes from when we feel like our prayers haven't been answered.
Panic sets in, which comes to equal pandemic. Pandemic. It's an extended period of something, not knowing what to do when what has worked is no longer working. The children of Israel in this place, the way they have fought in the past, they cannot fight now. And Moses, being their leader, is in a situation where he has to do something different. Text says that they get into this fight, and guess who's on the battlefield? You know this guy. His name is Joshua. As a matter of fact, he's going to assume leadership at some point, right? Joshua is leading. Stuart Pro Tem is leading. Well, no, that wouldn't be a Stuart Pro Tem. The officers of the congregation are leading people into battle, right? Joshua is one. Leading class leader is leading people into battle, right? Pastor is not in the battle. Class leader is leading people in the battle. I'll come back to that. Pro Tems are with Pastor Moses on the mountain. Now that's going to bother some people. Wait a minute, now we on the battlefield. Where he at? Bishop James Lavert Davis.
I've heard this one.
I went to visit his annual conference once, and
You like this one?
I did. I like this. Bishop, let me make it live for you. Bishop James Lavert Davis was presiding at an annual conference, and he said clearly he had a problem with people in the congregation because he had heard a congregation give an annual conference report. And they talked about how their pastor did everything. My pastor sweep the floor. My pastor locks the church. My pastor is there when I get up and come, and he's there when I leave. My pastor, and they were wearing this as an honor, as a badge of honor, that their pastor did everything, right? Singing, playing, all of that. Bishop Davis says, let me ask y'all, how many of y'all been on a cruise before? And people raised their hand. Ooh, me? He said, let me ask something. When you get on the cruise, where do you see the captain of the ship? Does he greet you when you first get on there? Yes. Okay. Do you see him at dinner? No. Do you see him when you're playing games on the deck? No. Do you see him when you are looking for towels in your restroom? No. Do you see him at dinner when you are eating and then you're asking for things? No. Do you see him at night when you go to bed and you need to call because something you want is not in your room? Does he answer the phone? No. Does he field your drink request? I said, no. He said, well, where's the captain? I said, oh no. Somebody raised up and said, the captain is leading the ship. He's driving the ship. He's directing, he's guiding the ship. He said, come here. If the captain isn't taking care of the ship's direction and guidance, the ship will crash. You'll end up like the Titanic. Come close. He said, why do you expect your pastors to do everything and direct the ship? We can't do that. We cannot do that. The pastor cannot direct the ship and see about everybody's need on the ship. That's not going to work.
And Moses came to that realization.
In chapter 18, he did. We'll get there too. And this is the reason why I lifted that for you tonight, is Moses has the people helping him in the fight.
And I want to put a pin there because this is the crux of this whole Bible study. And I don't want it to be misunderstood or misinterpreted or misperceived that this is a bashing. This is not what this is. But what this creates for the Israelites and for us in this situation is an opportunity. An opportunity, just like on the cruise ship, there's an opportunity for other people to make that ship experience, that cruise experience, all the more meaningful and fun. In this story, in this biblical narrative, it creates an opportunity for the persons who are not, quote unquote, Moses, the main guy, to have a role and a meaningful purpose in helping to bring about the victory that they will experience. And in this experience for us as pastor and people in the pandemic and hopefully coming out soon, whenever that is, to realize that, yes, the pastor gets tired, the pastor has the responsibility of leading the ship, but this creates an opportunity for all of us to get engaged and to help that ship become the best that it can be.
I like
and
that.
in this pandemic, I believe that's important for us, because whether we do that in a virtual format, a hybrid format, whether we eventually come all back, we don't want to create an atmosphere where it's all just one-sided.
Yeah.
Because that's no fun for you either. That's not meaningful for your faith building relationship with God either. And so what this is about is helping us to understand, as pastor and people, the opportunity that God has created for us to all be able to pitch in, for us to all be able to take our hand and put our hand to the plow and to help bring about the harvest. So
check this out. As you said, it's an opportunity for both pastor and people to do. In the early part of verse number 9, you will look and see that Moses gives direction. He says, I will go do this, and you will go do that. The direction comes from the leader, Moses. It's vital that people understand that the reason that it comes from Moses is because Moses is constantly in touch and conversation with the one who has led them there. If following God gets you into a battle, you have to follow God because it will get you out.
My.
If following God got you in what you're in, following God
That's the only way out.
will get you out. I promise you, whatever God leads you into, God has a way, an exit strategy for you to get out of it. So Moses says to them, you go do this, and I'm going to do this, and watch what happens. And they start. And so they fought. Remember, they've got to go through the Amalekites. Like we have to go through this pandemic, and they are fighting. And as they're fighting, they get tired, but they keep fighting. And here is Moses. He is looking on a mountain with other leaders. And as they're looking on that mountain, Moses leading, you discover Moses gets tired. The word says that Moses gets overwhelmed because, get this, he's just not looking. According to the scripture, Moses is holding his hands up. And now most folk will say, oh yeah, he's celebrating, shout. No, because you have discovered you cannot shout your way out of some stuff. You're just not going to work. This is what I was talking about, those cliches and that kind of stuff has ended because some folk believe they can just shout their way out of. No, you're going to lose weight, but you ain't going to lose, you'll lose weight, but you ain't going to lose your enemy. Here is what Moses comes to realize. He's raising his hands as a way to guide. He is guiding and directing the battle. He's guiding his congregation in the battle. And as he's guiding them, text says that he gets tired and his arms get tired. And so he starts to lower his hands and his arms. And as he lowers them, something strange happens. As long as Moses' hands were held, were up in the air, they would win. They were victorious. And people say, well, what that had to do with anything? His hands being lifted was, get this, the scholars have discovered, was a way of giving divine leadership. It was something in the direction that he was doing with his hands lifted. Something was giving the battlers encouragement. Maybe it was his way of preaching. I don't know. But whatever he was doing with his hands lifted, it was working because they were overtaking their enemy and their adversity. They were overtaking it. Whenever he got wearied, the scripture says his weariness what happened?
Hands start lowering.
As they lower,
They start losing.
the battle starts to change. And all of a sudden, two individuals come out of nowhere, if you will. And as they come out of nowhere, they introduce a new form of warfare. In a pandemic, there must be an introduction to new things. Aaron, who we know, and a fellow that you don't hear very much. He's only mentioned twice in the biblical narrative. Here and one other place. A fellow by the name of Hur, H-U-R. They, out of nowhere, come, slide a rock under Moses, sit him down, and they began to hold his hands up. And as long as his hands were up, and they held them up, the victory was for the children of Israel against a greater prepared adverse one. But when his hands went down,
Now I want people to hear, because I don't want that to go in and out.
okay,
To the point that we just made, as skilled, as talented, as anointed, as called by God as Moses was, to lead them through this battle. And as much as as success as they had when his hands were lifted, the victory ultimately came when pastor and people worked in tandem.
we're together.
So, and you're gonna get to this, and I know what's coming. Two church members come and keep the hands of the pastor lifted. And it's only because member and pastor worked together in unison did victory come. Now they could have criticized pastor for not being in shape enough.
That is true.
They could have criticized pastor for not having a better strategy that didn't require him to be tired. But as you're going to point out in a minute, they decided to do something different that had never been done. And to lift up. The point that I want you to get is we are stronger together. That we as a church will be able to accomplish anything together. As talented and as skilled and as scholarly and as brilliant as your pastor is, Dr. Washington, can't do it without you.
Yeah.
And as we're redefining these roles in this new and unfamiliar territory in desert warfare, understand that it may require some new and different things of both sides, pastor and pew, pastor and people. And that's really the crux of our Bible study. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I'm going to let you finish that out. But I wanted to make sure we put a pin there because I don't want you to miss that's really why we're doing this. Because we understand that this is going to require some changes out of us. But as we operate in the new environment, it's going to require some changes out of the pew too, and we want to help walk through that together.
It's interesting that you mentioned the piece about togetherness. Togetherness in Scripture goes throughout the biblical narrative. It's all through the narrative of people working together and with their leaders. What's clear is that Aaron and Hur are not people you are used to hearing about. I want to be clear that sometimes pandemics, let me say it this way. I was with some military personalities last week, and we were talking about leadership in the military and leadership in ministry and how parallel they really are. And this particular military leader said that, in the military, combat proves one thing to be true. Leaders aren't necessarily born as much as when the situation comes, they evolve. They stand up. They are manifested. And I said, that's very true. There are some leaders that God will tell you, I groomed them from the start. But a lot of the time, true leaders stand up in the middle of the pandemics in life. And what's unique is Aaron and Hur stand in the middle of a pandemic. They don't run from it. They don't put their head in the sand and say, let's keep doing what we're doing. They find a way to function within the guidance of their shepherd, Moses, and they serve. And make this personal. In this pandemic, how have you been forced to be a greater leader to your family? How have you been forced to become a greater leader, get this, to yourself? What have you recognized you had to do differently in the pandemic than pre? It's not just a corporate look. It's a personal revelation that God is trying to get you to. Because in order to survive your 2020 and 2021, you've had to change some things. And that's what this gets to. It's a tale of two members, really. It's a tale of two members who are attempting, family, to discover whether I'm going to stay the same or whether I'm going to become what the crisis has called for. And Aaron and Hur choose to become what's necessary. And that's a great challenge for you. It's a great challenge for Moses. Now, Moses continues to lead, but Aaron and Hur are able to boldly do something. Now consider this. There could have been people on the battlefield saying, what y'all doing? Why they doing that? What's going on? And maybe that's why they start losing also with the hands. But someone had to say, well, look, they're doing what they're supposed to do. Why don't we do?
I'm not a Patriots fan, Tamika Washington, but that was the Patriots' motto. Just do your job.
My God.
Everybody just do your job. And if everybody does their part, and trust the ultimate leader, we'll have the victory.
Here's something with the Patriots. I like Bill Belichick. I ain't no Patriots personality, but I like Bill Belichick. One thing Bill Belichick will go down in history for, him and Nick Saban both are going to go down in history. I see, Brother Lucas, him and Nick Saban both are going to go down in history. And Kirby, too. Speaking of, did we do something over there?
Yeah, Georgia won something.
They beat somebody, didn't they?
They beat one of them teams over there in Tuscaloosa.
Roll Tears is what I hear.
Something like that.
Yeah, Roll Tears is what I hear it's called
tears
now.
rolling right about
Tears,
now.
Roll Tears. Okay. Bill Belichick has a grand saying, and that is, you can't be me because you don't know everything I know. In essence, what he's telling his players is, my job is to put you in the greatest position to win. I'm going to do that. Your job as a player is to do what you have been instructed to the best of your ability. If the players on the Patriots tried to coach, they'd have a problem. But Belichick is clear. He's like, these are the things you can do to help us win. Do those, and you're going to see how extraordinary a player you are and a part of the team. We can't, Dr. E.L. Strickland used to say here when he pastored here, your arms are not long enough to box with God. And he used to tell us as we were coming up as ministers in the church, when we'd be like, if you do this, Pastor Strickland, if you do this, Dr. Strickland, he was like, you don't know what I know. See, you're looking at it a particular way because that's all you see. I am, put this way, the chairs in the sanctuary all face this way. The only chairs that face outward toward them and beyond are the clergy chairs and the choir loft, so they can sound the alarm. So the people who are in the pews can't see what's behind them, but you can. You see more than they. Moses could see on that mountain. He sees what the people can't see in the valley. And the people in the valley have to do what they're supposed to in order that things function well.
So obviously, and as he mentioned, Aaron and Hur step up to the plate. They get engaged. They do something that had never been done before in biblical narrative or in warfare to that time. And Moses had to be humble enough to accept the help, but they had to be bold enough to say, I see an opportunity, and I'm going to get engaged to make sure that we succeed as pastor and people. And so we're about at time. I think we may be over time, but that's all right. It's been a few weeks, so y'all will be okay. But the basis for what we're doing, and I know I've strung this along to say, well, what is the theme, right? What is the theme for these next several weeks?
What is it?
And the theme is really, it's a book that we have been looking at that has come out a few years prior, and the name of the book is I Am a Church Member. But for the theme, I really want to do something a little bit different, and I want to turn that on its head. And for the next several weeks, I want to ask the question to us. I want to pose the interrogative. Am I a church member? And I want us, as you watch, to really ask yourself, in this pandemic, in this new normal, in the way that I am now relating to my church, whether it be St. John or Allen Temple or whatever church you may be a part of, even if you do watch our study, and we appreciate you, to really ask yourself, am I really a church member? No. I mean, am I really a church member? In this season, in this way that I have chosen now to interact with the church for whatever the reasons may be, am I a church member? And I hope that as a result of these next 6 weeks, that the answer will be yes, I am a church member. Pastor, even in this environment, I am a church member.
Pastor, what's unique is I want people to stay tuned each week, not just as a church member, but what we're sharing, biblical principles that we're going to walk through, is not just for the corporate life you live with other believers. It's personally transforming. You are a leader in every facet of your life once you become a follower of Christ. And what we're talking about over the next few weeks can impact how you lead in other places. That's the whole key. So am I a member? And how can I be a better one? How can I engage to grow in 2022? But also as a member of my family, as a member of my friendships, as a member of an organization that I may be a part of, am I a member in this season? Am I part of the team in this season? And if I'm not,
what can I do to get engaged?
How can I come and be a part of the team?
And so what we're going to do, we're going to go through this. We have the book. If you want to buy it, you can look it up. I Am a Church Member. It's by Thom Rainer.
Not expensive.
It's not expensive at all. If you want to get a Kindle version, you can. We're going to look at it. We're not going to go word for word with it, so it's not going to be that type of study. But we're going to use it as a basis to reimagine these things in light of our current situation. And our hope and our prayer is that as a result of it, you'll find ways that you can reimagine what membership is in this environment. When we've been forced to stay home or to engage and relate to our churches in different ways, that as a result of this, you'll be able to say, you know what, am I really functioning as a member? Am I doing things in my conversations with others that help to support the growth and the health and the wellness of the church? Am I doing things as a church member to help the church grow and move forward and support the pastor? Am I a church member in this season, and what does that mean for us? And so our whole goal is to help you to see that, as we saw in the Exodus chapter 17 text today, that there are ways even in unfamiliar territory for pastor and people to grow and to get involved. And really that's the only way for us to really biblically get where God wants us to be. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity. This is not pastor bashing. This is not anything like that. This is an opportunity for us to reimagine and explore together what these new roles are. Because the truth be told, I've asked myself, am I a pastor in this pandemic?
Oh, wait. If we're honest, not are we a pastor, do we want?
Do I want to be a pastor?
Do I want to be a pastor?
And we want to help us answer the question for you as well. Am I a member? And our goal is at the end of this to be able to say emphatically, enthusiastically, unashamedly, yes, we are. And the church will be better for it.
Yes.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to
I'm
this
beyond
together.
excited.
Hopefully you've gotten something out of this today. Please continue. If you've gotten something out of it, let us know. If you're not, let us know that as well. You can always email us, call us, text us. You know how to reach us. You can use the Allen Temple app. You can email me, call me. You have our numbers. You can use the St. John email address. You have your pastor's phone number. You have your leadership's phone number. Please use it. We want to engage in you and hear from you. Until then, we want you to know that we love you, Jesus loves you, and there's nothing you can do.